should the church support Black Lives Matter? Right? And you've got the movement and the statement. What's the difference?
So the statement is a truth that is underlined in the Bible, or so the statement is a truth that the Bible would support. Black Lives Matter, right? And everyone agrees with that, except for the people who just want to be contentious. The movement, however, if you look at what they stand for and what they represent, then they are not consistent with the Bible, and in fact, well, of course not, but even more so is like there's a statement in their belief system that actually attacks like the family unit, the nuclear family unit, and for the Black community, like that's huge because our families are already under attack and kind of in this really are almost in ruin. And so collectively speaking, so in other words, like the philosophy behind this organization attacks the institution that God has created and ordained. So therefore, the church should not support the movement in terms of like money, but in terms of like praying for like the leaders and wisdom, and for them to recognize Jesus as Lord and Savior. Yes.
Yeah. So even okay. So even within that, there are a couple of issues. One is that the movement, as we're going to define it, does have a lot of. If you read the statement, there's a lot in there that I could agree with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The desire for inclusion, the lack, the desire for diversity, even them standing up for those of different communities, right? There's a lot of that I can clearly agree with. And like you said, there's a little bit of it that causes me to question, the validity. And so here's the challenge, at least as far as I can see it. The challenge is, it's just like, in my mind, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. In both of those, there are things that I clearly support on their platforms and what they're trying to do in the political realm. And in both of those, there's parts of it that, from a Christian perspective, I have a hard time supporting. And then that's just the platform, right? That's what we read from on the Black Lives Matter platform, or the Democratic Party platform, or the Republican Party platform. And then you look at what some of the fringe people in those groups actually do, and that too is really hard to support, right? And so what happens is we see most of the Democrats, we see some of these on the fringe that you think, oh man, that's hard to support. And we see most of the Republicans and people on the fringe that you go, oh my goodness, how in the world could anybody vote for him or her? And you see a lot of good that the Black Lives Matter movement is trying to do, but you look at the fringe and you go, oh man, that's really, really hurting their cause more than helping. And so anytime there is a worldly or political desire to solve spiritual issues, there's going to be a challenge for those of us who are kingdom people.
Yep.
And I believe that racial equality is going to happen through the gospel and through an understanding of who Jesus was. Jesus came for the very things that that we all want as we talk about racial equality. And they're both summed up um, in Matthew 22. You've heard it said, love the Lord your God, your heart with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when he was asked, well, who is my neighbor? He told the story of the Good Samaritan. Somebody was beat up and bruised and on the side of the road, and a lot of church people walked by and didn't do anything to help. And then a guy from another race walked by and picked him up and took care of him. That's being a neighbor. And almost everything is summed up in that. And to me, it looks like that the only thing that isn't covered in that big, broad principle is his principle in Matthew chapter 7. You've heard that it was said, love your enemies and hate your neighbors. I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you will receive your reward from your Father in heaven. Because if you're only nice to the people who are nice to you, what reward do you have? Everybody does that. And if we recognize that, we're called to love our neighbor as ourselves and see everybody as our neighbor. And then when you see someone who you would think, wow, I wish they wouldn't do that, or why are they doing that, or I don't like that, or I can't stomach that, great, pray for them too. Right?
I think God has always had like a heart for the oppressed, right? And obviously Jesus carries that right through, you know, from Isaiah to Matthew and on. I think, Nick, you said something like, you know, it's a statement that we can all agree upon, but it seems like we've gotten these lines drawn where some will say Black Lives Matter, and then people have to like feel like for whatever reason, I've got to say all lives matter or blue lives matter or something along those lines. Why is there a difference between saying Black Lives Matter and these other statements of these other lives matter too?
Why is there a difference between saying Black Lives Matter and these other lives matter? Or
yeah, you know, it's a catchy slogan, so we've all adopted it to something else, right? You know, and now, but there, for whatever reason, for some folks, just saying the words Black Lives Matter for whatever reason is hard on their tongue, and so they want to come back and say, well, all lives matter, and that's obviously that's to God, all lives matter. But what might people be missing when it comes to that statement that maybe they just don't understand?
Let me give a stab at that, and then Nick, you react to what I say about that.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So Black Lives Matter is it's a phrase that says there are times when those in the Black community need special concern. When George Floyd's there, it started with
Ahmaud.
No, it didn't start with Ahmaud. It started way back with
Rodney King.
No, well, not that far back. It was 2011. It was the guy that was shot outside of his apartment complex, and the guy that shot him was anyway. It'll come to me. But here's the point. Black Lives Matter means that there are times when the Black community needs special concern. And let me give this as an example. If we have a building that is completely and totally handicapped inaccessible, and then someone in a wheelchair wants to come into our building, they say, wait a minute, I can't get there because every entrance in your building is 6 steps up, and I either have to have someone carry me up. I can't just roll into your building. Well, if and when that's the case, then the handicap lives matter. The only way they can get in the building is to build a ramp or do something so that it becomes handicap accessible, right? And so we build a ramp so that those who are handicapped can get into that particular building. It's a special concern during a time when there is a specific need. In this case, Black Lives Matter points to the fact that there is inequality. There has been systematic inequality for many years. And there are times when it's very clear that we have to give special concern to those in the Black community. And therefore, Black Lives Matter. It doesn't mean that the police don't matter. It just means, hey, this needs some extra and special attention right now.
Yeah. So to piggyback off of that and to kind of circle back to a few things. So just reiterating what you said, you think of, and this is not an idea that's original with me, but just the idea of like breast cancer month, right? Like we celebrate that month. I believe it's October. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. But like, uh, NFL wears pink shoes or some kind of pink ribbon. Everyone wears pink, right? And that's not to say, oh well, prostate cancer doesn't matter or testicular cancer doesn't matter, right? but but it's just to say, like, we are going to focus on this issue because it is an issue, and let's focus on it and let's tackle it together. It is supposed to be something or a statement or an idea that unifies us and helps us kind of fight and eradicate this problem, right? So yeah, like the statement, the idea is really important. To circle back to a few things, I think as far as like the church's involvement, then there has to be a good balance, right? So you so so we have to take the Good Samaritan approach, right? Um, so if you see your brother like on the side of the road, then you should probably pick him up. You should probably help him out, right? Um, Also, if we look to the Bible, then there's a few other examples. So if you look at Second Chronicles 14, 15, 16, just kind of that, in actually 20 or so, um, then it talks about these kings of Judea. So we know that during the crisis period, there was the northern kingdom and then the southern kingdom. The southern kingdom was Judah, and the northern kingdom was the kingdom of Israel. Well, at this point, the northern kingdom had basically rejected God, and they're kind of doing their own thing. The southern kingdom, they were kind of waxing and waning. But anyhow, there's this king, um, King Jehoshaphat, of the southern tribe, which is Judah. And so there are two instances in his reign where he actually joined forces with like the Northern Kingdom, um, where like the faith and the ideology and the alignment with God was off, right? So like the Northern Kingdom, King Ahab, you might remember him. He married Jezebel and the story of Jezebel, right? So he was described as a wicked king, and Jehoshaphat was described as a righteous king, or a king that sought after the Lord. But they joined forces, and because they did, um, then God sent a prophet to Jehoshaphat and told him, because you joined forces with him, I'm not going to bless this. Later on in his life, he did the same thing. So after Ahab died, there was another king called Azariah. Don't quote me on that, but it's just go to like Second Chronicles 20 and read. But anyhow, so again, he joined forces with him as well, and God said, because you did that, I'm going to destroy what you created. Uh, and so there's a balance of like of joining forces and really marrying into that ideology. But then there's also the mandate, right, that we have to be a good neighbor and to help those who are poor, who are hurting. So there's a balance that the church has to take. The other thing though is, and and this is the issue that I take with is, you think of like how Black Lives Matter started, right? So you think of there was, or Martin Luther King said, the voice, let's see, the voice of the writer, man, I can't think of it. But anyhow, it is the idea of like those who are voiceless, they riot. And so, yeah, so the voice of the voiceless is to riot. And so you think of like the church not moving into this area of racial reconciliation and justice, and this leaving this vacuum where so if the world, so if the church is not going to deal with these issues, then the world will. And so you have this secular movement who moved into this vacuum that the church, that was the church's spot. And so now like we have this movement that, okay, I agree with this, I don't agree with that. Well, really, it's kind of our fault because we didn't move into it the way that we should have.
And I think that's something that we're going to be talking about in another topic coming up pretty quick, just in terms of why the churches have been silent, and then specifically what can the church be doing as part of supporting justice just in general. And so we are right on our time limit, and so we're going to be wrapping up. But just as you listen with your group, or if you're in your car listening on a podcast, or wherever you're listening, be thinking about how can you support the Black lives in your life? Like, how can you love your neighbor? And I think last time we talked about it, Nick said, we got to put faces and names to some of these situations. It just can't be the Black community, but who do you love, and then who are they affected by that you can show support to and show love to, and be a godly neighbor like Jesus commands. So be thinking about that, and us three fools will be back with you with another session soon.